Welcome to Michael Potts F1, everything Formula 1, but from photographer's point of view. Round 16, the Italian Grand Prix from Monza. That was rather a surprising result. I really didn't think Ferrari could do it. Not until 11 laps to go. They really were not in contention, but somehow they've pulled off one of the great Monza wins. But perhaps this was also a case of McLaren snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. McLaren were very strong in Zandvoort, delivering a statement win for Lando Norris, and after they got a front row lockout in qualifying, it looked for all the world like this race was on a plate for them. McLaren's race starts are becoming a bit of a thing. Lando did do a good job of keeping the lead through the first corner, only for his teammate to barge past him at the next chicane, and Charles Leclerc sneaked through into second place. Lando has now not been in the lead after the first lap on every race that he started from pole position. It is becoming a thing. McLaren's strategy is also becoming a thing. The big call was to bring both drivers in for a second stop. After the race, in interviews when asked, both drivers said that this was the right call, but I think it was a call that could have cost them the Grand Prix. Monza is usually a one-stop race. Pirelli's pre-race simulation suggested that one-stop was the fastest option, and a one-stop worked for Ferrari. McLaren have to ask themselves why they couldn't make it work. There were a lot of unknowns going into this race. The track had been resurfaced, the new tarmac was darker, it retained the heat for longer. I did spend large chunks of time walking on the racetrack during each day, and I could feel the heat from the track through my trainers. Maybe these unknowns caused McLaren to be a bit more cautious. And there's one more thing that's becoming a thing: McLaren team orders. Currently, there aren't any. But if Oscar was told to back off and drive for Lando, there wouldn't have been that first lap aggressive overtake that knocked Lando down to third. He would have retained first position, and his tyres would have been much happier. Possibly a one-stop would have been more probable. And a McLaren 1-2 with Lando winning would have cut the lead in the Constructors' Championship to 1 point, and Max would only lead Lando by 52 points. And I do think we are getting to a point in the season where both drivers are going to have to work together. As it is, Lando needs to close the gap to Max by 8 points a race on average. He did that here, but that was the bare minimum. They've squandered the perfect opportunity to put the boot in and close the gap to Red Bull. No driver wants to be handed the championship. I'm sure Lando wants to win it properly, on track. But pragmatically speaking, this is not working. And talking of not working, Red Bull were nowhere in this race. Easily the fourth fastest car in the weekend. On Friday practice, it looked like they were keeping their powder dry, not yet using the soft tyre, and the expectation was that they would be strong in qualifying. But that never happened. 7th and 8th was the best they could manage. Two things that should worry every Red Bull fan. Just about every other team bought a Monza spec rear wing. Because this is such a fast track with very few corners, every team wants to shed as much downforce and reduce air resistance as much as possible. Look at the difference between the rear wings used at Zandvoort, which is a high downforce track, and the ones used in Monza. They're completely different. Most teams bring an extreme wing that will only really work here. Even on the other faster tracks such as Spa, the cars need a bit of downforce to navigate the wiggly bits. So to save money on making a one-off track-specific wing, Red Bull just cut down their wing from Spa. As you can see, they cut these wavy bits in the back to reduce drag. At the car presentation on Friday, the team did try their best to hide these changes from us prying photographers. But this cost-saving option was a bit of a strange decision. It hints that they're having to pick at which upgrades to focus their limited budget on, and they are being forced to compromise. The other worry is that Max has described the car as a monster. The Constructors' Championship is all but gone, and they really need to think about defending second place from Ferrari. It's now been 6 races without a Red Bull victory, and McLaren, Ferrari and Mercedes have all won in that time. Mercedes will be disappointed with 5th and 7th. George should have been competing for a podium, but being forced wide into turn 1 ruined his race. The big news from the Silver Arrows this weekend was the signing of junior Andrea Kimi Antonelli to race alongside George Russell next year. He was given his first free practice session at Monza, and he lasted all of 5 laps before he binned it into the wall in the Parabolica. It's not the best start of the Formula 1 career, but we should not forget that Max Verstappen crashed a Toro Rosso doing a demo run in Rotterdam before he became a Formula 1 driver. Those first 5 laps that he did were quick, and there's enough to see that he's going to be something special in the future. he did have to watch the rest of that session from the garage sitting next to Toto Wolff. Another new face was Franco Colapinto, the Argentinian driver who is replacing Logan Sargent for the rest of the season. He did a very respectable job, bringing the car home unscathed in 12th place. This is only one place off Sargent's highest finish so far for the season, that of 11th place. Kevin Magnussen scored points for only the third time this season, and he also received more penalty points, the result being he's banned for the next Grand Prix in Baku. He is the first ever driver to be banned for having too many penalty points. He did have a bit of a tricky race weekend. He crashed massively in pre-practice too. Have a look at his tyres after that session, covered in dust. And then he went wide into the gravel in Parabolica, kicking up stones and dust. His place in Baku will be taken by Ollie Behrman. Monza can be a tricky track to photograph. It is very flat. There's only a handful of corners and the light can be very extreme. That said, there are some brilliant positions. The organisers have created a number of towers around the track. Here is one at the Parabolica corner. It's possible to shoot the cars from almost above as they power around this fabulous corner. Here I took some slow shutter speed shots of the cars and I got these wonderfully abstract results. This is a race that attracts celebrities. It's the final round of the European season and it's very festive. Jack Dorsey, one of the founders of Twitter, was attending, along with Hollywood stars Jeremy Renner and Michael Douglas. I suspect Michael Douglas now has qualified for a season pass, given how many events he's attended this year. But it's the fans that make this event truly spectacular. This was one of the largest crowds ever to attend an Italian Grand Prix. 336,000 over the course of the race weekend, almost all dressed in red. And they were treated to a phenomenal win by Charles Leclerc and Ferrari. But this wasn't just a win. This was a heist. This was daylight robbery. There was no way it should have happened. Since his win in Monaco, Ferrari have been awful. But this is Monza, and regardless how bad a season Ferrari is having, there is an expectation that they will deliver at the Temple of Speed. But despite that expectation, it looked like this weekend it just wasn't going to happen. The team were very disappointed at being 4th and 5th in qualifying, and there was an air of inevitability of a McLaren victory, and few people expected Ferrari to be on the podium. Charles did get a brilliant start. He made a bold move to take 2nd place, but then he fell back inevitably to 3rd. And when the two McLarens stopped and he stayed out, I thought they'd messed up the strategy and given McLaren a huge undercut advantage. Then, on lap 42, as I was walking back to the paddock, and I saw the two Ferraris out in front, and I started to wonder if they were going to risk it and go for a one-stop. The McLarens on faster rubber were closing fast, Sainz got past, but Leclerc held on to win by 2.6 seconds, nursing these old battered tyres home to claim an epic win at an epic track in front of some epic fans. Forza Ferrari. Thank you so much for joining me for this look back over the Italian Grand Prix. I really do hope you've enjoyed it. If you'd like to see some more photographs from the race, there's a link to my gallery in the description below. And if you haven't yet, please do like and subscribe. There's a lot more Formula 1 content coming your way. Our next stop is Baku in Azerbaijan, so until then, goodbye.